Welcome back, my friends, to another BTJ Brick DVD review. Today we're checking out Wristlocks for the Win by Tom McMahon, Alliance Black Belt. And he jokes on there that he's gotten about 10% of his competition victories by wrist lock, and that's like 10% of the time they work every time. And he's a pretty funny guy, but it's not just about always submitting your opponents. It's also about getting them to move or react, or just to be cautious of what they're doing. But it definitely shows a lot of finishes that actually get the tap with the wrist lock. So let's take a look at the DVD itself. It takes place filmed in front of a live class, or maybe a seminar, if you will, that he's basically teaching. Occasionally you'll see students asking questions or getting their questions answered, which is kind of nice because a lot of times people have the same questions. So you might be wondering something at home, or if you're training on the mats, trying to, well, why is it not working? Well, he might have just that answer just for you already from another student asking the same question. He does a great job of explaining the basic principles between controlling the hand and controlling somewhere on the arm, as far as not letting them move it before you really start to get that wrist lock finished. He shows wrist locks from many different places. He starts with them standing, and then into, I think, my favorite position for wrist locks is basic guard, closed guard. He's got a lot of options and combinations and attacks from closed guard. That's where I've had the most success personally with wrist locks, and I picked up a lot of great tips from him from that spot as well. He also shows wrist locks from passing guard, a lot from a knee cut pass. He shows a wrist lock from top side control when they're trying to defend and create a frame, how he attacks that with a wrist lock. He said that's a very high percentage technique. Looks very nice, very clean as far as wrist locks go. He also shows wrist locks from mount and back. He shows all this stuff, and it's a lot of stuff to take in, try to take it in. But then at the end, he shows basic defense to wrist locks, because he said on there, he doesn't want you guys going in here, learning all these wrist locks, trying to figure this out, and then going and getting wrist locked yourself. And that's a good point that he made, and he really wants to prevent that from happening to you as well. So he shows you a basic defense. So he'll rewind it and show you some standing defense, and show you how to get out of a couple of them that he showed you, and helps you deconstruct what's happening and how to avoid it. So not only can you feel confident with your attacks, you can also helps you be aware as far as defense goes, just so the techniques are out there. And then if you do happen to get caught, how to react. So a lot of great detail. You don't always see that in the DVD, some showing the counters to what they just taught you, but it's really nice to see that in this wrist lock DVD. A little bit about wrist locks. They're not for making friends. You choke and you armbar your buddies all day long. You do a wrist lock or two, and they'll start to look at you like prison rules, or what's going on. People sometimes get frustrated with wrist locks, especially when they're being applied to them. I think they're being they're a little sneaky sometimes, and you catch people off guard. But I've always enjoyed applying them, and I never had a problem if anybody wants to try a wrist lock on me. If you're new at a place maybe, or people already don't like your style, and maybe you're a little too rough, you catch them with too many elbows, maybe not the best thing. But if you're already a friendly person and you want to try this, you might take away a little bit of your friendship capital that you've built over the years. I'm just kind of joking about that, but people do react a little bit differently socially to wrist locks. They kind of like, man, this guy's crazy trying to take my hand off. But they're perfectly fine. Wrist locks for myself have a special kind of place in my game. A wrist lock was the first submission I've ever tapped a black belt that I didn't know with. So it was from a closed guard wrist lock attack, and caught him by surprise. And I'll probably always remember the first time I actually made a black belt tap, and it was from a wrist lock. So it's not some secret thing that is going to fix all the problems in your game and all that sort of thing. But for myself, I've always had a kind of affinity towards wrist locks, and I think that's probably why I've had that. Another thing that wrist locks do is to get people to react. And they get people often to react in a big way. Instead of just pulling your arm, you got to yank your arm away from that person, and that really opens up things. So a lot of the DVD covers, how to apply the wrist lock, and then if you perhaps don't get the submission, they're going to do something that is advantageous for you anyway. So a lot of times you get them to move in a way that's not really that good for them. So just have that in mind. Yes, I'm applying a wrist lock. Yes, I would like to tap, but also look and see if there's a great place they can go from here, even if they don't tap, because they're often moving in a way that's not really that great for them, just to avoid the wrist lock. It opens up a lot of doors for you. Another thing that he points out on a lot of these submissions, and I think pretty much the whole DVD, is covered with low risk submissions. By which I mean, if you're in mount and you're doing pretty good and you want to go for an armbar, you swing your leg over the head and yeah, you didn't quite get it super tight, you're a little lazy with it, and the person reverses the position and now has top and is passing your guard with a lot of pressure. That might have been seen as a little higher risk. These wrist locks, if you don't get them, basically nothing bad happens as far as the position goes. You're not really risking much. So you could attempt a wrist lock and they don't get it. Well, you're basically in the same spot or better, because the way that you didn't get it, like I was talking about before, is they gave up something. So pretty low risk as far as submissions go. You're not really risking your position. You might risk them freaking out a little bit, or maybe picking up the pace a bit. But other than that, feel free to try these as much as you want and maintain a dominant position, or at least a neutral one like guard or standing. So a lot of good options and situations come up from attacking the wrist. And these wrist locks, he shows a lot, but once you kind of see these and see the principles that he shows you, they're everywhere. So who's this good for? Well, in IBJJF, blue belt and up can do wrist locks. So there you go. Pretty simple. White belts, you're probably better off learning the more maybe basic submissions, sticking with larger joints and the neck, of course. But anybody higher than blue belt at least needs to have an awareness of wrist locks, because they could be applied to you at any time. And if something that you want to work on, it could be a definite tool for your game that can get you a lot of submissions or get you a lot of reactions to your game. How to get the most out of this? Go through the DVD and see what positions you end up a lot. Are you a close guard player, or do you like to play from top or mount or side? Pick out those particular ones and see how you could add them to your game. And then see what happens when you don't actually finish the submission. So you're a close guard guy or gal, and you get this position and you start playing the wrist lock and they pull out of it. Then what happens? So you're going to find yourself in positions you're already familiar with, and you're going to get that reaction that is also, you're looking for the submission and you're looking for a big reaction. So those are two big things that could happen from you attacking the wrist. So you'll be able to kind of be ahead of the game. You'll be able to be one step ahead of them, if not two, as they counter your wrist lock and as they try to get out of it. And most people counter the wrist lock the same way. That's what I found from trying these. People are going to either get out of it or not get out of it. And the ways they get out of it is basically the universal. So if you could just pick a couple of these that fit well to your game, to positions that you're in regularly, go ahead and start plugging those in and watch how they try to escape these. And you'll see that a lot of times it's by instinct. They haven't really thought about how to get out of a wrist lock. Well, like we have, how to get someone off my back, or how to get out of this arm bar. I have like set things in my head that I'm going to do, and it might be A, B, or C, but I kind of have a plan. Most of the time with these wrist locks, people are escaping from just instinct. They want to get out, and they're kind of pulling something out in the last second or two. And generally speaking, these reactions are shared by most of the grappling community that don't know a whole lot about wrist locks. So I think it's a fun tool. And there's definitely, it opens up a lot of doors for you. They're all over the place. He does a great job, Tom does, of explaining the basic positions that you could find some in, and then also the principles behind that, to where even if you want to try this from a spot that he didn't explain, you could understand how you're going to grab the wrist and control maybe the elbow or the shoulder, and go from there and apply that to your own game. The DVD was provided to me by FightHub, thefightHub.com. Check it out there. There'll be a link in the show notes, and they gave me this for review purposes. So thank you for that, FightHub. And check us out next time. We're doing lots of DVD reviews and product reviews, so please subscribe to the channel. Thanks, guys.